Welcome back to the Green Rush. I'm Josh Kincaid. I'm here with Doug Miller. Green Rush is a cannabis business talk show produced by Pro Cannabis Media. We discuss new issues in the cannabis market each week, discussing a deep dive into the cannabis topics. This week, we're going to start off with what happens when there's no regulation.
Well, that just sounds exciting, Josh, because no regulation means that we can actually have banking and businesses could actually succeed in this kind of crazy market because it's clearly being a tough time for even the biggest MSOs that have a ton of cash just because of that one major thing. And it also introduces interstate commerce, which is another huge deal because it's literally impossible to do nationwide commerce without being able to set up a hub in one state where you can produce cheaper than trying to set up hubs in every single state and work with them regulations. And we see that's becoming an issue. So
Yeah.
that would be an amazing time, Josh. I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, not only that, but I think being able to go across state lines is going to be huge too. We talked about banking that does exist. Cheaper banking is nice, but I think that's here. Investing, normal business activities here, being able to cross state lines and reducing some of the redundancies and elimination, or reducing that, I think would be huge. So before we get to what would be the top states if regulation wasn't a factor, like if the federal government got out of our way and let us do our thing. Um, First, just taking a look at the top 25 companies that BDS Analytics looks at, you could see that 56% of 2021's share came from house brands. That's like vertically integrated companies that grow their own. Now, versus the total brands, you can see there's 2,200 total brands, and they're bringing in 1.9 billion in sales. A lot of that's coming from Cresco all the way down to Maramid, on this graph. So just kind of giving us a baseline of who's out there, who's doing what, and kind of what their market share is. But none of that really matters, when we kind of move on to what would happen during a time without regulation. If regulation wasn't a factor, you're just looking at basic like statistics, right? Like how many people are in the state of California? It's the fifth largest GDP. That's gross domestic product. So they're right in line with, and the US is there too. So California kind of acts like their own government, right? They produce a lot, but Texas is huge too. We've heard a lot of hype about New York, but they're down there fourth. And then Doug, you're in New Jersey, and they're kind of like way down there. But
And
if you
I
add those
believe
two,
it.
if you add them together, though, obviously they make a bigger market. But this is kind of just taking into consideration what would happen if the populations that exist out there were to take up their percentage of market share.
Yeah, and I definitely get it. And as a New Jersey, if it was allowed to grow more, I think it would bump it up because we do have so many people in the state. But our regulations are crazy. I mean, they only allow so many. Literally, all the operators are MSOs, and there's only very few of them, and even they're getting squeezed out. They're squeezing each other out because they're allowing other companies to open up, and there's just not the space for it. I mean, we're looking at economic times that aren't the best, and then you add on all these extra add-ons to these companies, and they have to mark up their prices. And like you were saying, they just can't do anything like a normal business in a cheap factor like banking and interstate commerce and anything along them lines. And then on top of it, they have extra security on top of that, and then extra security on top of that. And then it costs so much to just grow the quality products. So there's just so many different avenues going on. And then, yeah, the regulations, just when you throw all them other things in and then you have the regulations, forget about it. It's almost impossible to succeed. You have to be very bright. You really have to know the space. You have to love the industry and know it like the back of your hand, and also know business that well, because if not, you're in trouble. And
Mm-hmm.
you got to learn to pivot too.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that people are going to have to do in order to stay there. You look at Arizona and Washington. Washington, where I'm at, it's been around for 10 years for the market. New Jersey, we talk about like we need this world domination or something. Just think about a restaurant. They do really well and they have one location. So you could just have your own neighborhood shop or your neighborhood brewer or equivalent, your grower somewhere. So I think there's a lot of hype about how we need this domination, and there's a lot of FOMO, and I think it's driving people to maybe grab more market share than they know what to do with. And that's happened with a few people that I've talked to, publicly traded companies in the cannabis space that grabbed too many licenses. It slowed them down. They had to liquidate so they could actually move. I think Fluent was one of those companies. So I just think it's interesting that some of these states on here, you get a lot of hype, but in the end, people are already bouncing out of Florida, Oklahoma, even New York. You're seeing people just be like, yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a shit show for a while.
And they're supposed to come down really hard on the operators that are doing things illegally right now. So New York's about to get pretty interesting because they're passing all kinds of legislature and things of that nature. And yeah, they're going to be coming down pretty hard. So I'm kind of I want to see what happens because it just got crazy. I mean, so many people just started opening their doors illegally, and they couldn't. I mean, they I guess they could do something about it. You can always shut down whoever you're the city and you have the licensing, but I don't think they even had the manpower to start to do it. There was so many places opening. I mean, they had trucks driving around. I mean, it was just
Mhm.
crazy, and I mean, they still do, but I've heard that they're really going to look to crack down on that. So that's why it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, but for every 30 um you know mobile trucks that are driving around in New York, there's probably 10 bodegas that are popping up claiming to sell CBD. So it's a full-time job trying to stop that for sure. But yeah, we did see some like Curaleaf bounce out of California, right? And there's MedMen tried to sell, but then they tried to get a better deal in New York, and then that deal fell through. And it's like you should have just got the money and ran. So let's take a look at vertical integrated retail dominance, because I
Well,
think there's something to be said about um, license holders and really how if you get too bloated and you lose um focus, you can just slow yourself down and eventually go nowhere. Um, so the size of the market, when you compare it to California, because California's this huge conglomerate, huge state. So when you compare it to that, Arizona is like 40% of it, but they have 61 brands. Percentage of sales is percentage of sales that are branded is about half, and then um, of those that are branded, the top five that are vertically from the MSOs are only three. So I'm just seeing from the far right, not very many of them are popular. Not very many of them are good. So maybe you could grow hops and make a finished product, but it doesn't really seem like people really want that. And if you go to a place like um, Colorado, where a lot of those vertical MSOs are just pushing their own stuff, you don't have a lot of options.
yeah, no, you're stuck on their brand, and like you said, they just grow it in house and they don't really deal with anyone else. We kind of have that issue in New Jersey. I feel like it's yeah, the
Mm,
dispensaries can sell the other dispensaries products, but I mean, you could easily just go right to that place, and they're not really like Curaleaf is not really selling Breakwater's product because Breakwater is the probably the best one in the state, and so they're not going to sell a product that's just that good at their location. I mean, that would be
mhm.
insanity. So you're only going to get as good as you're going to get in that area, and that's it. And I don't think Breakwater even sells any other product because they don't need to. So
Mhm.
and that's like you're saying. I agree. The quality and the smaller shops are going to do better in the long run. I think because it's less overhead for one. They can control the quality of their product, and I think more people nowadays are becoming more educated, and with money being tight they figure, hey, if I'm going to buy it, it better be really good, and I'll spend the extra couple bucks for it to be really good instead of just buying that average thing for. And in New Jersey we have insane prices. We're still like $60 an eighth. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that is
That's
crazy.
crazy.
But is that flagship model sustainable long term where, like a Nike store only sells Nike versus you go to Nordstrom and you can get Nike and Adidas and whatever? Do you think that these flagship stores are sustainable? Because Nike just had to leave Seattle. You're seeing in Portland that Cracker Barrel and Walmart and all these stores are having to close. I laugh because like who goes to Cracker Barrel, but um yeah, all these stores are having to like leave Portland and all these states because they're not making any money, and it's Target had to close a ton, like 20 stores because of theft. It's not worth it. So if you're not making the revenue, is it really worth having that flagship store model, or would it make more sense just to go by volume and sell whatever people want?
And I would think that I guess you have to target your areas. I'm sure each place has a target audience. I mean, I remember I went to Portland, Oregon for a convention, and this was going back 5, 6 years. And I remember going to the convenience store, and literally like every single thing was in like one of them safety lock cases. And I was like, I come from the Philadelphia area, so it's not exactly the best place, but I mean, it's not terrible. But I was amazed. And like the homelessness out there, I remember taking pictures because I couldn't believe it. And now, fast forward, you see what goes on out there. So, yeah. And I had asked the cashier because it took like 25 minutes to check out because every single thing they're unlocking a case for. I mean, even like scissors, the dumbest stuff. I mean, it's just, and she was like, if we don't put it in there, it won't be on that shelf. I'm like, that's just crazy. She's like, we're not allowed to do nothing. And they just come in and just take whatever they want and walk out the store. And no one does anything. I'm like, how does a store operate like that?
Yeah, that's
Why would you
exactly.
even want to risk it? Like, it's not worth it. Like you're saying, I would rather just close the doors and not have the overhead and the headaches.
Yeah, that's exactly why Target had to close so many stores is because you can't prosecute. It's pretty wild. Um, so let's see what like people are grabbing. Like if regulation wasn't an issue, what would people be buying across the US? Like if borders weren't a thing. Probably flour is going to be top, right? In California is 40% right now. So you would think that something would have to become really, really cheaper in order to take away that market share. And I think the number one product or SKU that has that opportunity is beverages because it's so expensive to make, and to have to duplicate that in every region is insane. So once they can have regional bottling facilities, I think that has the best opportunity. I think maybe the most overhyped segment is concentrates.
Yeah,
Vape pens sell for convenience, but it's not, people only want it for convenience. They don't really prefer the experience or the high. And I don't think there's as many dabbers as the market anticipated. And the number of people I talk to, from bud tenders to consumers alike, flower is their go-to, like predominantly.
no, I agree. And you know what the problem is with concentrates? I mean, they're amazing and they're fun if you really want to get to that level. But if you smoke it consistently, flour will just you're just wasting your money with flour. So you can never really enjoy flour because your levels are just so your tolerance is just off the charts. And and vapes, I honestly don't prefer them at all. I understand that they're very convenient for certain people. I'm a big bong smoker, so I love flour, and I would rather have the most quality flour and smoke it out of a bong, very clean, like, looks like it just came out of the store, clean water, have it nice and filtered, and you have that taste and the experience, and you get, and that's another thing, you get the experience and feel like what them terpenes and that actual strain does for your body, and you can get a good idea of which ones help you and which ones work better with you, with
Hey
your
Doug,
body.
are you that guy that like when you go skiing or whatever, like road trip, do you bring your bong with you and just like rip it in the car? Because I know guys that will do that, like they'll go up to the mountains and they get pulled over, they just throw it in the back seat and they're like, I hope that bong water doesn't ruin my ski jacket or whatever. But how do you travel?
I will take a bong with me, but I never smoke and drive really.
Mm.
I just never wanted to get caught that way. And growing up and always smoking, I would always just smoke before I left. I mean, if it's a long car trip, of course you're gonna smoke a joint or something. But no, I won't smoke a bong in a car. It's just asking for trouble for to me. I always try to play safe than sorry. And but yeah, no, I'll smoke a joint. But when I travel, I always either send it with me or bring something, or I know I'm buying a bong out there and just leaving it with somebody, or I do that all the time. I'll
Yeah,
buy a
I do that
piece
in
and then
Canada. I'll buy
yeah, okay.
a vape card and just leave it in Canada, whatever. But my lawyer said only break one law at a time.
So
So
that's a good idea.
I think that's pretty good advice. Pre-rolls are huge. I think they're going to probably overtake vapes as soon as lounges open up and the stigma goes away. Vapes, again, is not the ideal experience, but it is convenient, whereas a nice, joint is going to be the preferred method, I think, for a lot of people.
No, I agree 100%. And now they've gotten it so easy to make the pre-rolls with the big machines and everything. So it's
Hmm.
just and all the cones are out. I mean, it's just gotten and I love them, to be honest with you. The cones are great. Even them pre-roll blunt ones, and they have the like the snap bottom with the terpene profiles that are really nice. I mean, they have some really cool things, but I agree 100% because pre-rolls are a big seller in like
They
just
are.
about every dispensary.
And those pre-roll automation machines are making them ubiquitous. It's everywhere. They're easy to roll, but it's also creating some issues in the industry like consolidation. Because once you're able to reduce your expenses and then still not increase your sales, it's time to maybe look at merging with somebody else or calling it quits. And there's a lot of distressed companies out there doing just that. They just can't increase their sales, looking for more limited license states like Cureleaf so they can have some quote unquote competition. And so what we can see from here is if we look at the 2021 data on mergers and acquisitions, there was 306. That's a lot more than in 2020. And this was during COVID when sales were really high. And
Mm-hmm.
now that sales have dropped down, people are like, oh, that was temporary. So it's going to be even worse. And we're going to see a lot more consolidation. And I think what we've seen in New York is a much quicker turnaround from FOMO to fear. Just
Yeah,
straight fear, not fear of missing out, but just fear like, oh, I better step out of this market.
and then the people that got in during COVID were getting in at good prices. And now you look at the prices now of real estate and banking and anything you want to do. You want to get a loan for something, especially in this market, you have to go outside and do different banking sources and them interest rates aren't exactly low all the time. They usually smack you across the head with things like that. So, and then your real estate's always going to be more because of what you do. You have so many insurance, and then like I said in the beginning, you have security upon security upon security, and then you got to still grow the quality product, which costs a fortune for overhead, and you really need the quality people with knowledge to be able to do it. So you got to have all them pieces to the puzzle to make sure it's really going to work right.
Mhm.
And some people are like, oh yeah, it's a cannabis business, like it makes a lot of money. And they just jump into it with like a bunch of money that they made, and it's like,
And they
do
miss
you
the
really
biggest piece,
understand?
which are the people who know how to grow, because you have no idea how to scale this plant. It's evident because it doesn't smell like hay, but it doesn't really smell like anything. It may look great, but it's a harsh smoke, and that's like 90 something percent of everything out there.
Mhm.
So I think that um, a lot of the price compression, because it's a race to the bottom as a commodity to be competitive, we're seeing a lot of people kind of freak out about how low prices are. I remember seeing pitch decks, 4 or 5 years ago out of Philly and New York for like $7,000 a pound. And they were like, yeah, we're gonna get $7,000 to $9,000 a pound. Do you have any idea what like wholesale is running at now in that area where you're at in Jersey or surrounding area?
Well, I know like pretty much on the legacy market, we're right around like 2000 for a nice pound of
Wow.
something. So yeah, it's and I know everywhere else in the country is nowhere close to us. We literally have the highest legacy and the highest dispensary prices, almost doubled than everybody else in the country. I mean, we could go to Massachusetts, which is like 4 or 5 hour ride, and their dispensaries are only $32 for an eighth, and we're paying 60, and their quality is way better. Like our
Mm.
quality here, like I say, Cure Relief, I mean, they're obviously closing a facility for a reason, let's face it. And yeah, that's what we get around here. And it's kind of sad. It's almost a ripoff. So it's interesting. to say the least.
Well, good news is prices are be coming down a lot quicker than they used to, because when a new state would emerge, it would take 2 years for those prices to come down to normal. Whereas now they're like, oops, supply's coming on quicker. And even if it's not, consumers are like, I'll just hop over to this other state or whatever, or go to my legacy or whatever. So you could see that prices of pre-rolls in California are 16.90. So this is an interesting arbitrage opportunity, right? Like if you were in the pre-roll business and you wanted to buy pre-rolls in Oregon for $8 and then sell them in Illinois for 22, I mean, talk about a nice spread on that trade.
Well, 12. Yeah, you're making some nice money right there. You're making more on the back end than Oregon's even selling it for.
Mhm. Yeah.
As a middleman, that's not a lot of business models, but that would be amazing.
This would be like a commodity broker's chart to be taking a look at spread opportunities on buy and sell and what the arbitrage is. Once, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, once these state lines are removed, these prices are removed and the quality will go up, because you can't have a competition or a cannabis cup in Oklahoma and be like, oh, my genetics are fire. And then somebody from California rolls in and be like, you guys are get out of here, go
Yeah.
home. That once it normalizes the price and normalizes the quality, it's better for everybody in the industry. And I think it'll rise the competition up by trying to go back to the legacy market and getting those guys who know what they're doing back in, so that they can do something about it. Because no offense to the construction workers and everybody who came in as carpetbaggers to try and like get, some money, but man, we need some people who actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, you need the people that have the knowledge, that have been doing it forever, that really care about the plant. They were doing it when it was really illegal because they cared about it, not because they wanted to try to make money. I mean, some people were doing it for the money back then, but even then people cared about it. And yeah, you need people like that because like you said, you get a bunch of just regular old people that just see the opportunity to make money, but they don't understand how the plant operates, how to grow it, what it's about. And it's not just a tomato plant. It takes a lot. And just the drying process. I mean, that the curing process is just about almost everything. I mean, you need great genetics to start. If you don't have that, you might as well not even try. And then you got to know how to cure it. So, and then everything else in between has to be perfect. But then the
Yeah.
curing process has to be perfect. And that's not exactly easy to do. And that's why you always get the stuff that looks good and smells like garbage and tastes like garbage because they don't know how to cure it.
Or
And
flush,
yeah. And
or anything in between.
yep, it's
But if
crazy.
you guys don't know what that means, Google it. We're going to take a 420 break. So you got time for a little puff, puff, pass and Google and whatever else you need to do. But come back because we got some more interesting stuff to talk about. So we will be right back.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
Welcome back to the Green Rush Live. I hope you enjoyed that 420 break as much as we did. And we're just going to start right off with Curaleaf. They closed a facility right in New Jersey. I know the facility very well. If you follow the show, I speak about it very, very often. And they've been busted by the state multiple times for selling moldy product. Our state doesn't really enforce the laws in New Jersey and that kind of thing. They just tell them that they have to make it better, and then the next time they come out, it's supposed to be better, and it's never better, but that's just the way it works. And you can see why they are closing a facility, but it's also we're starting to get better dispensaries around here. We have one called the Cannabis, and it's an MSO, but it's a little bit smaller of an MSO, and their product is way better. So their line is now the line that's always long, and Curaleaf used to be around the block, and Curaleaf literally has zero line anytime that you can just walk right in at this point. And I mean, they used to have it, the line was so crazy that the cops used to have to direct the traffic, and they made a fortune just off of parking tickets because there's not that many areas to park around there, and people were just parking wherever they want. There's construction going on, and they would just tow cars. Like they literally had a tow truck out there. It was just like it was a circus going on for a good 6 to 8 months, and now it's just completely came to a standstill. And yeah.
Do you remember when Krispy Kreme first came out, people were standing in line for hours for donuts, and this guy's like, "Oh yeah, I'm at Krispy Kreme." I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "A donut place." I'm like, "Why are you in line?" And he's like, "Oh, these are really good donuts." And I go, "Why are you in line?" You know, like why? So why aren't people in line anymore? Is it because they realize it's not good, or is it just like a new nightclub where it's like, oh, we got to go be seen at this place and go stand in line? Is it the new thing that makes it hot, or is it the trash that makes it better to go to instead?
I think it was a combination of the two. It was one of them emerging markets where everybody just wanted to be able to go inside of a dispensary and buy legal cannabis. And then they did it a few times. Everybody, you go like 4 or 5 times, and then the novelty kind of runs out, and you're like, all right, this is just another time at the dispensary. So now I'm going to really look and see for quality if I'm coming here and spending these crazy prices, because the novelty kind of wore off a little bit because now it's easy. And then you realize like, yo, they're selling better stuff all over the place on the street for way cheaper. I mean, just way better and way cheaper. So it's just, But and then again, they started opening up better dispensaries, and they definitely took the crowd because it's a lower key dispensary, but the line now is around the building. It's crazy all the time, and they have better product, and I think that's what people are really looking for as the novelty wears off. That people are allowed to buy it recreationally and legally. They just now they want something better, and they're becoming educated. And like I said, money's tight for most people, so they want their value, and at $60 an eighth in New Jersey, it better be damn good. And I think that's where Curaleaf just ran into a hell of a lot of issues because they just can't pull it off. They have 4 or 5 grow buildings. I mean, they're huge warehouse facilities, and they were just cranking out product. I mean, like I said, the line would be no lie. You'd see people 3, 4 hours. I would know people. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, I
But
just
they
want to
also
be able
just
to.
you were saying something like during the 420 break that they just bought somebody for like 25 million. So they were acquiring people. So is it the rumor? Are the rumors true that it's because of the unions where they were like, we're out, or like what's your take?
Well, that's what I've heard, that the rumors or the unions were kind of in New Jersey, or the dispensaries are kind of forced to become unionized, and Curaleaf was like, no, we're not going to have it. And apparently they just closed a facility, like a huge grow facility. Like I said, it's like 4 or 5 buildings. It's giant. And yeah, they have another facility in a town not too far away. It's not as big as a facility, so you're talking they obviously seen a large decrease in volume of product that they're selling, so they were able to close the facility. Because if they were still selling that amount, they wouldn't have closed the facility. Like I said, if they still had that 2, 3 hour line waiting around the corner, it was they were just making money hand over fist, even when it was very hard in an industry. If they could keep that going, they would definitely be profitable, but they just couldn't keep it. And
If you haven't seen the videos of Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, getting grilled for
yeah,
shutting down, he's on a Senate hearing earlier this week,
yep.
got absolutely grilled. It was pretty interesting. He's like, no, we didn't shut those down because they were trying to unionize. That was just business. Like, what?
Yeah, it's
All
just
right.
business. It's just numbers and business. And
I mean,
I
we
mean, I
need a
could see.
labor union to come back, man. Like, there's no people can't afford anything right now. It's like I just heard an earnings report for an egg company, like, oh yeah, profits went up because they made more money. I'm like, uh-huh, and it costs us more to buy them. So like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
It's
so
great.
Curaleaf, like you said, they acquired a company called Desert Wellness in Utah for $20 million. And so they're pumping out $20 million. They're closing facilities here. They shut down in Colorado, California, and Oregon, 3 big markets. But yet they're going to open up here, I guess, because they figure there's less competition. I have
Mm.
no idea what it is that they like. What's the mindset for the investors that we're bleeding cash and we're going to acquire another company for 20 million and we can make that one profitable too? Like, they can't make the first company profitable.
They could probably make a ton selling their license, I'm assuming, unless they want to. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing, but it's obvious to me that they can't compete. So you have to reduce their expenses, maybe sell it, get some money back, and go to the next emerging market and try to fake their way into there.
That's what it seems like. They're trying to hit the smaller markets and even scale back on them, because I mean, you're going from some of the biggest markets and getting out, and like New Jersey's not the largest market, but just it was a very large operation that they were the first one in town. I mean, the first ones in the state to really have an operation was that Curaleaf. That's why it was so busy. It was huge. Like I say, it's 4 or 5 buildings, and then they have the dispensary, so it's giant facility. And I've seen it all. It's a hell of a place.
You
But
would think
again,
first mover advantages would work, but like MedMen is obviously not the darling of the MSOs anymore, and their first mover advantages has not worked for them at all. Um, Yeah, is it an anomaly in the cannabis industry to have first mover advantages, or is it just bad management? Or I mean, it's hard to say. There's so many issues, but
I mean, I think Cureleaf did a really good job being like first in the marketplace. I think where they really screwed up was just scaling too big And then, like you said, just not having the right management in place. Like if you don't have the right growers for a facility that large, it's going to catch up to you. You might be pumping out product, like I said, because it's a novelty, but that
Mhm.
novelty wears off. I mean, people would travel out west. I mean, they used to have parties, like literally like bachelor and bachelorette parties would fly out to Colorado just to go to dispensaries and hang out, like people that are into the cannabis. And yeah, I mean, it was a business, but now it's like it's 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 adult use almost everywhere you go. And the novelty kind of wore off for almost everybody. I mean, unless you're just turning of age, or you're in Kentucky or something and they're just announcing it and you're all excited. But I mean, most people have traveled around the country and gone to a dispensary at this point if they consume cannabis and they kind of like it. They've had the option to go somewhere probably and get it. And yeah, so now it's at the point where, and you have all this knowledge on the internet and everywhere else, that these people want quality. And I don't think the big MSOs can really produce that quality on that kind of scale.
Not
And
yet.
not
No.
yet anyway. Yeah, not yet. I think they could build it up. I think they build it up too fast. And then it's like, all right, now they build it. They had the money to build it, but then it's like, all right, now we don't have the real players to play the game. So you build this giant arena with this great game and you don't have the players. It's like, all right, so now what do we do? And I think that's what's kind of happening right now. And like you said, they need to get a lot of these players that were in the legacy market long time ago that were doing it, that still do it, and really get them pumped in here and make them part of MSOs and part of grow teams. And that's how I think the industry will really start to grow, when the big MSOs realize they can't do it on their own and they need the help of the people that have been doing it a long time, and they finally work together. I think the industry can explode at that point. And then
Here's my suggestion for Cureleaf: get out of your own way
mm-hmm.
and get rid of all of your plants and let go of all of your people, and use like a farmer's market as an analogy. So you go to a farmer's market, MMJ market, and you have all of these people selling their stuff. So flip the script on that and just give them a space and say, you have, 10,000 square feet, you have 1,000 square feet, you're tier one, you're a tier three. Let these guys go do their thing, because you clearly can't do it. So let the small batch farmers do it. And then just like the tomato farms that are predominantly really, really small, and yet they're at Walmart and all these big, Kroger's and stuff. But tomatoes are grown small batch. They don't scale at all. And so let's do that. Let's provide the space for somebody who knows what they're doing, give them revenue share, make them a partner. And otherwise, you're gonna be the last player in the game, like Idaho. But hey, before we get to Idaho, you already teased us with Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, I thought, was going to drag us to infinity. What's happening in Kentucky?
It looks like the governor's signing the bill and they're going to become a legal adult use recreation or adult medical state in 2025. That's when I think that's when they said that would be the first year. I was like, why do they take so long? But then again, they always take so long. It says that would be the longest it would take. But yeah, they signed the bill today, and Kentucky is going to have medical cannabis. So congratulations, Kentucky, because that's always the first step to get yourself into adult use. They're never going to just be like, oh yeah, you could have adult use, and we didn't have medical set up first. They always have medical set up first. Every state adopts the same stupid pattern and rule. They don't learn from the last one. It's like that one, yeah, that format doesn't
They
really
might
work
they
all the
might be
time.
learning, because Oklahoma just said no, right? So
Well,
as I've mentioned, once you go regulated, the quality turns to trash, garbage, nonsense. And so Oklahoma maybe figured out, like, we got 7,000 licenses, like we're screwed if we turn to a regulated market. So let's just drag this nonsense on for a little bit, even though I've heard that market is really bad. Generally speaking, medical marijuana markets are way better than regulated. So kudos to the people who are actually turning it down. because they realize, or maybe I don't know what they're realizing. I'm hoping that they realize that what we've done hasn't worked out, and they should wait for the perfect scenario. Because they always say, "Oh, let's just get it passed, and then we'll change it." No, 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 no. A decade later in Washington, we haven't changed anything. So I don't know. It's like, keep your medical market. It's way better.
Yeah, no, I keep my medical card. You get to skip the lines if you want to, because adult use has a line and medical always has preference, and that's, I think, in every
Yeah.
state they do that. And so yeah, if there's like a long line and I just want to walk in, I just walk right in, show 'em my card. And you're supposed to get um a better menu, I guess, like better choices, but I don't really know about that. I mean, I think it's all the same, to be completely honest with you. It's
Mhm.
yeah, they have
Like better
different
menu, like you
menus.
have like higher THC limits
I think
legally, or
Yeah, I think that's how it works. But again, I mean, really, what's a THC limit? It's all nonsense. It's just a number, and that's why I always say try different strands that you really like and see what works with your body. What terpenes and cannabinoids are the best for you, and uh, and go from there. So that's why I always like a very clean piece, because you can really get the effects of it and really know what's working for you. And I think it's important. I mean, you use it for fun, but you also use it for medicinal purposes, I think. I mean, it helps you not hurt and headaches and this and that. So that's, you might as well use it to its full benefit.
yeah. Anything special about Kentucky? Like, are they going to do anything different than anybody else? Allow like 2 ounces like Oregon, or is it going to be like the same old thing, or do we gotta wait till 2025 to figure that out?
I didn't say anything yet. They just said that the governor was actually signing it today and signed it. And then yeah, they said that the latest it would be rolled out would be the January 1st of like 2025. And
Yeah.
so you'll assume it'll probably take them a year. I mean, anymore, it's easy. They all adopt the same legislature. So, I mean,
Mhm.
they all just went to Colorado and just took that. I know our state did. And they just basically adopted Colorado and California's, and that was that. And
I'm
so
seeing the
it's,
same thing with the lounge bills. Everywhere is just kind of grabbing the same verbiage and copying one another. And it kind of makes sense. You don't really need to reinvent the wheel necessarily. So once somebody spends the time and effort to, I've drafted a cannabis lounge bill. It sucks. So copy and paste.
yeah, no, it's very repetitive and it's a lot of information. And like you were just saying, like everyone wants to be like, oh yeah, pass it and we'll change it later. They write these things, and literally like 3 to 5 years later things start passing. But you have to remember, things change so quick that
Mhm.
everything that they wrote prior that they're about to pass has
Mhm.
completely just it's useless. And so we every state, I know New Jersey does it all the time. And yeah, they'll write a bill and then 3 years later they pass it. And it's like, well, that was useless because everything changed. The whole industry changed. All that wordage is useless. And yeah, so it takes them forever to do anything. And no one learns that. No one's learning a lesson from that. That's for sure.
Yeah, but Kentucky still passed it. I mean, we were all clowning on Mitch McConnell, like it'd take forever and not do anything. But there he goes. So we'll see if D8 is super popular in his state with hemp and everything, that's growing in Kentucky. That'll be interesting. What's crazy though, moving on to Idaho, there's some lawmakers that introduced a bill to legalize medical cannabis in Idaho, which I thought would be the absolute last state on the planet. I wasn't even aware that they legalized hemp in Idaho.
I didn't know they did either, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it was just a joke because obviously with the farm bill at the federal
Farm
level,
bill, it's
but
everywhere.
they have their own thing there because they literally confiscated hemp, right? So there's like, to them it was illegal.
Yeah.
So I never expected in my lifetime I would see Idaho legalized.
You don't want to drive through Idaho trying to
So,
transport anything.
yeah, yeah,
You
legal,
do
like
not want to be in that state.
you want to go around them. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
so check this out. I guess they're calling it a personal bill, which means it doesn't have an introductory hearing. So the bill came as a surprise, wasn't on any sort of legislative agenda apparently, but the House Health and Welfare Committee chairman filed the bill on Friday to authorize the use for people that are diagnosed with various health conditions. So my guess is that's going to be very, very limited, just like some other conservative states that we've seen with limited accessibility. Some of those are going to be like Alzheimer's and like MS or ALS, cancer, chronic pain. I'm not even sure how you, yeah,
Categorize that.
yeah, Crohn's, IBS,
Mhm.
ulcerative colitis, epilepsy, MS, terminal illness. So not a lot, but it's
But
a start.
it opens the door. I mean, like I said, it's how every state basically, well, just about every state, especially if it's, they're not really going to introduce anything like Kentucky and Idaho's. And Kentucky's all right, but Idaho, yeah, I'm surprised to see anything come out of Idaho with this.
And
And
it was a GOP too. So this is a Republican
yeah,
who came out of nowhere. So I'm wondering, like, have the parties switched? I'm just thinking that in my head. We don't have to get in politics, but or is it lobbyists? Like, is he getting paid to submit it, or does he really care about seizures and irritable bowel syndrome?
you never know. He may, someone close to him or a family member, you may actually see the benefits of it. I actually love when that happens, like people that
Yeah.
just don't understand it. And then unfortunately, things in life happen and someone close to him gets affected and they start using it, cannabis, and they're like, yo, this is incredible and it's changing my life. I know, like, we've never thought about it before. And they actually see it with their eyes and they go, you know what? I should probably take a step back because it's a plant that grows out of the ground. And if it's my buddy's telling me and I trust him all the time and he's telling me it helps him, then maybe I'll believe him. And all these other people are saying the same damn thing. Maybe they're all on to something. And so sometimes that happens. They have a change of mind, but I don't know what happened. But I like when them stories happen because it's like, hey, you actually got to see it like firsthand and it changed you. And actually, it's you really convince somebody when they see it firsthand, and especially somebody that can make a difference, like a GOP member or anybody in legislature that can actually write a bill and do anything. Because you and I aren't doing anything sitting here; we're just discussing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a feel good story if somebody were to have that kind of firsthand knowledge, and it doesn't take much. For example, I went down to my state capital in Olympia, Washington, and talked to some House reps and senators about trying to flip the felony on maintaining and operating a cannabis lounge. It's actually a Class C felony. It was so dumb. So once I told them that people who live in an adult care facility or an apartment and a landlord won't let them and a federally subsidized facility won't let them, they have nowhere to go. And to feed them, you know, uh, these Marinol or any other painkillers, muscle relaxers, whatever they don't want to take, they have no other option. And that was the biggest thing for me, is to say, hey, we need to have a facility for them to go. It shouldn't be a felony. And then once that was presented with this story of mine, a friend that had MS and has passed away since, that lived in an adult care facility, it sort of was a good enough connection for them to go, I didn't know it was a felony. It seems like a good idea, and we should look into this. So it was bringing awareness with a firsthand story and an impact. And of course, you have to say it's going to help small businesses. We have social equity applicants, and we're going to generate revenue for you. So you do have to come with a good storyline and script. But the whole impact is like, yo, there are people out here who need this.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, we see people all the time that rely on it, and they've given up pretty much all their pharmaceutical medication because it's just they've realized it's almost like taking a sugar pill after about 2 or 3 weeks, and it leaves their system, and they change what they're doing in their health and their diet and exercise. A lot of them things can be just eliminated, and I'm not saying everything, but I mean, they're giving kids Adderall at a rate that's just absurd. I mean, it's almost, I think I read it was like during COVID they were just handing it out like candy, and now there's apparently a
Oxycontin to
shortage.
11-year-olds is crazy,
Yeah,
man.
it's like what? Like, what are you doing? It's like speed. I mean, what are we doing? Like, this country is just so bizarre. And now apparently there's this big shortage and all these kids are hooked on Adderall. I'm like, so what? We just basically gave meth to a bunch of kids during COVID to keep them focused on a computer? Like, Okay,
Have you,
that
have
makes
you
a
seen
lot of sense.
Ozempic? Ozempic is there's a shortage of Ozempic for people with diabetes because everyone in Hollywood is taking it to lose weight.
Yeah, yeah, they're taking
Cool
shots.
story, bro. Cool story. Love
Isn't
that.
that amazing? Yeah, it's like what?
Ah,
Like what is wrong with people? Can
drives me
you
nuts.
imagine? It's insanity. You're like, just how about eat healthy
THCV.
and exercise?
Can't we just promote THCV? It'll like reduce your munchies and you don't have to eat as much or whatever the hell your problem is. Like, it drives me crazy.
Like the stress in your life, like, yeah, like figure it out. I don't get it, but it's insanity. Like I just can't believe doctors are just willing to just write that script for kids
I know.
so fast. Like, oh yeah, my kid can't pay time. Oh, well, how about the fact that they get up at like they're up till 3 a.m. on their phone, and then they get up at 7 a.m. and they're on a device all day. They barely get any exercise. They don't eat healthy. They lay in their bed, and then and they communicate with their friends on their phone by text message. You don't think any of that has anything to do with it? Like, nah. Let's give them Adderall. Like, it's
Right.
crazy. Like, what?
Do you think that people of Idaho are going to push back? Like, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the country. Florida is having an issue with a naked Michelangelo, or at least that's what I'm seeing on social media. I have no idea what the issue is. I don't even really care. But we're also seeing that Idaho might legalize medical marijuana, which I find insane to be a fly on the wall to hear people just freak out like the devil's lettuce is coming to town, like I think that'd be insane. Or is it, or do people care anymore? What's your take, man?
I just don't think people care anymore. There's just so many other issues going on in this country. I think cannabis is just like one of them things. Even the people that used to care, they just are just like, whatever. Like, if you guys want to go smoke, whatever, do whatever you want. Can we figure out how to get this country operating the right way?
Exactly.
And yeah, I don't think cannabis seems to be the big issue anymore. It's just they're not just pushing anything forward because the whole country's a mess and nothing's going forward. So cannabis is just sitting on the plate with everything else that's economically tied to this whole entire country because it's just on a stall. We have, like, I say absent administration. You need to get things done, especially when you have times like this. We need people to step it up and really ensure the people that things are being done. And I don't see anything happening. I mean, I look at the stock charts pretty much constantly, and I can see what's about to happen. And unless they change the pattern of what they've been doing, it's going to be an all-out insanity in this country because and now they're going to print more money. So that's going to really just it's the icing on the cake. And they're just setting it up for the best explosion ever. That's all I can say.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, we'll see what happens. Only time can tell.
Yeah, interesting stuff happening with that. I'm definitely looking at XRP and some other things happening out there, but maybe we'll touch on that. But I think maybe we got a little smoke break we could take here, and then we will come back with some other stories in the news. Twitter is allowing for advertising, so we could talk about that, the impacts of what it might be for traditional advertising. So stay tuned. We're going to be back with a lot more from Pro Cannabis Media, the Green Rush, all of that coming back. So stay tuned.
So for years, we've been doing manufacturing, financial services, medical, and so forth on businesses that stand alone, from doctors' offices to day traders to even small banks. And so when cannabis came along, all of the tools, skills, and miscellaneous that we learned in there, we were able to apply it for them. And for us, it wasn't that big of a problem or a challenge. It worked great. And so they just needed a reporting feature in one software, and luckily that the software company came through for us, came it back, and now it's become the backbone for our offerings, and it's worked out incredibly well.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegits filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
Welcome back to the Green Rush. I'm Josh Kincaid, co-host with Doug Miller. We are back with the business of cannabis, talking about all kinds of stuff today. News coming left and right. I don't know if you were here for the last segment, but Idaho might legalize medical marijuana. That's insane. Other things in the news, Twitter. So cannabis companies might be able to actually advertise. I don't know if you've heard about that, Doug, but you probably do know about all the stupid stuff from Do you remember back in the day when you couldn't even have a YouTube channel? Like growers would come in like 2011 and then they would get their channel shut down and then raided by the FBI and everything. Now everybody's like, we don't care what you're doing. But you still can get shut down on Facebook and Instagram and like everywhere else. But apparently Twitter doesn't care anymore. I think that has more to do with maybe money that they need to collect rather than any kind of anything else. Also, it's under new ownership. I don't know. Have you heard about it? What's your take?
Uh, Elon probably doesn't really care too much what the cannabis companies do, and like you said, they could probably use the money as well. He definitely overpaid for the company, so he could use some money any which way he could get it from back from that company. But no, I think it's a great idea, to be honest. I mean, they allow everybody else to advertise crazy nonsense all the time, and as long as you have, and there's always, well, not always regulations on the internet, but as long as they can be approved by the company, and they can say, hey, listen, that's crossing the lines, you can't show like consumption or certain things. I'm sure they're going to have guidelines, but I think Hemper Company, they put one up and I think it got taken down the first day. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure what happened, but I know
That's
that they were
funny.
saying that they actually tried it. They were the very first people to try it, and it got taken down. I guess I don't know if like people can complain about it or what the case was, but yeah, they tried it. Curaleaf had done one, and Purple Rose did one for a Canagar, and they actually got taken down because it and they just they sell like the boxes and stuff of like products and ship them out, and yeah, they kind of got shut down. So I have no idea what's going on, but it was cool that they even announced that they were going to allow it, but it doesn't seem like they're really allowing it fully, so I'm not sure.
That's the thing. Like, if you allow it with so many restrictions, like the crazy stuff in Washington State with some of the laws that they've tried to enact, I've mentioned that they would try to reduce concentrate limits to 10% in Washington State. They've tried to implement rules where you couldn't have certain shapes or colors because that's too attractive to kids. I mean, it's really, really draconian, crazy, authoritarian control, when everything else has all of these. Like, I saw some guy drinking an IPA from Elysian Brewery. It's a local brewery that got bought by Budweiser, but like this can looked like a psychedelic thing with hot colors and everything. I was like, whoa, that could definitely be something that a kid thinks is juice or
Yeah, like a
whatever.
fruit drink.
Yeah. So I don't know why people would be getting shut down, but I definitely hear about it less. Like, are you still hearing about people getting their Instagram and Facebook shut down for cannabis? Because that seems to not happen anymore.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, I don't really know many people doing it on Facebook anymore, but Instagram, that seems to be the big place that everybody wants to promote it. And I remember, I mean, just a couple months, like I guess about a year ago, it seemed like people were getting shut down left and right, and it was a big business to be able to get your account back. Like I heard people were
Right.
spending thousands of dollars. I'm like, to do what? But hey, when you have like a huge following, you're making money off of that, so I get it. And but yeah, I don't hear anybody anymore, and I'm not sure if it's because people aren't exactly consuming online or like people figured out exactly why they shut you down. I have no idea, but it doesn't seem like they're as strict anymore with the cannabis on Instagram. And like I said, I'm not so sure about Facebook. I don't really check it out for that, but Instagram for sure, you can easily go on and find anything you want. You have Dab and Granny out there having a good time, and I mean, there's a ton of great Instagram famous people in the cannabis industry that do amazing things every day on there, and they're not shutting anyone down. It doesn't seem so. I like it because I enjoy following them and watching what goes on. It keeps you educated.
Yeah, I kind of just crop dust it. I don't really hang out on Facebook. I just look, maybe I'll post something and I'm out. Like, that's it. It's either funny cat videos or just drama, and I don't really have time for either of those so much. But I do want to see, friends and family that are growing up and kids, whatever. But it seems like a lot of people are looking at, TikTok and Instagram having a pretty high return on their time when it comes to cannabis. Maybe Twitter will try and pull some of that over, but I do find it interesting though that a lot of people that are involved in cannabis tend to be more liberal or left leaning, and they were really mad at Elon for doing his thing or whatever, and yet he's offering an opportunity or a platform for people in the industry to advertise. And in an era when Instagram and Facebook and everything was getting shut down, if you've tried to find an alternative, then all of a sudden there were all these labels thrown at you, like you must have loved Trump if you went to Brighteon or BitChute or any of these other platforms. WeedTube came out of that era, but it's gone nowhere. And I would say that Brighteon and BitChute have gone nowhere either. Rumble seems to be going somewhere. Truth Media, I think that's one of Trump's one. I don't think that's gone anywhere. So there's a reason why people have to go onto these other platforms, is because we're just getting canceled by the industry. And I think if anything, kind of the Twitter files is showing that some of it is being directed by state officials saying, hey, cancel that person, shut that account down. That's wrong think, that's bad. And a lot of it, or some of it, was satire, blatant, obvious satire. But I'm guessing they were using really bad algos or just stupid people making bad decisions. That is very likely in DC. But regardless, just having a place where we can all go and not be shut down and be forced, like Best Buyers, whose Washington State base had to get her account back like 100 times from Instagram, because when you have 100,000 people, like you said, that's your user base, that's your livelihood, that's people aren't going to keep trying to find you if you keep getting shut down. So it's like this business thing, and unfortunately, I don't think there's there isn't an ideal opportunity or platform for the industry as things kind of evolve and shift. You don't want to get stuck on MySpace, but then you don't want to be labeled this, that, or the other, if you even care. I certainly don't anymore. But it is interesting that there is kind of this split or dichotomy between the industry, whether wrong think or opportunities, and where do you find people and how do you interact, what's acceptable, what's not, how all of these gray areas really need some explanation, which hopefully legalization would pave the way for, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah. And it's funny because LinkedIn for a long time didn't really accept cannabis. So LeafFly came along. They were basically the LinkedIn for cannabis. And then LinkedIn said, oh, well, we'll allow people to do cannabis business. And so LeafFly was basically useless because LinkedIn's huge. And LeafFly literally just announced, I guess, a day or two ago that they were going to change their business model and no longer be announcing news, but they're going into like the consumer content and doing product evaluations and things of that nature. So they're changing they're pivoting as well. So it is kind of interesting that, they got put out of their own business by somebody that just wasn't accepting cannabis, and all they did was say, yeah, we'll allow cannabis people to promote on LinkedIn, and LeafFly was no longer a business. Basically, it just evaporated.
Why couldn't they just pivot? That doesn't make any sense to me, that especially in a sense when AI is really kind of just coming out now, where you could just throw a story out there. So I get it that maybe the individuals that they hired weren't garnering enough likes and attention to the articles they were writing, but maybe you could reduce your staff and just have one person pumping out all of these AI articles or whatever. It seems like a wasted opportunity when you already had that inbound marketing or that pre-made funnel to automatically come to you in search of these articles. Why not continue to have that be pushed out more easily with AI generated videos or articles? And then really just pivot and focus on this new thing they're going to try to do on products, which, I mean, there's 2,000 products in Washington. Who's going to test all those? Good luck.
I don't know what they're trying to do. Maybe they're just trying to find people online that want to produce content, but that's basically what their press release was saying, that they're going to get into product evaluations and things of that nature. But yeah, it's just like I agree 100%. Why throw away a news part of it? Like MJ Biz does great. I mean, you go on there, it's constantly updated with the best news. Like if they were to do something along them lines and also produce good content, they might have a chance because I mean, you're talking a publicly traded company. It's not like they don't have any money. I mean, we're not talking about like a little mom and pop shop here. So it's just like I don't get the business side of it either. Like the business sense, it just doesn't seem right. And I was looking at the chart today, and that doesn't look good in my opinion either. So I look at stock charts, I can kind of tell what's happening with the company, and yeah, it'll probably hit the basement and bounce for a quick run, and it'll be a perfect opportunity real fast because there's always that opportunity. But I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't look good for the company. I said it. I think I did my high on Wall Street on it this week. As a matter of fact, I was saying that yeah, it doesn't look like a good pivot. It might have been their only, opportunity to change. Maybe, they had to. The board members decided that news wasn't cutting it, but like you said, they might have just not had the right staff, the right thing going, the right management, and then they just threw a whole they built a whole entity and then they just threw it away for nothing. So it doesn't make much business sense to me, but that's what they did. So yeah, it's interesting in the whole social media world that they were built basically to be the LinkedIn of the cannabis industry, and then all it took was LinkedIn to just say, "Oh, we'll accept cannabis businesses," and that business was just gone. So
Yeah, and I think LinkedIn's done a great job, even though they were acquired by Microsoft. They've been really open to the idea of cannabis. I have never had a single issue on there, but you don't have the same types of posts. You don't really have people consuming or maybe putting the same kind of message out there. There's no drama, or at least I don't see it. Of course, I hear people talking about it. I think they get that no matter where they go. They're just the dramatic type. I don't ever see it though. So I do get a ton of stuff in my inbound direct, inbound mailing about, do I need SEO and do I need all this? Like, no, I don't, but I'm still grateful that it's there, because what am I going to do? Like, go to Facebook for funny cat videos? Like, if I want to conduct business and see what's happening in the industry, that's great. I don't use TikTok because the um, user manual or whatever scared me to death when I read it. I was like, no, not
I
doing
don't have
that.
it on my devices either, Josh, for the same
Yeah.
reason. I just don't. I'm like, what? I'm not.
But for our company, Instagram has the highest CAC, the customer acquisition cost. Sorry, lowest CAC, the highest return on investment for advertising and getting new subscribers or likes or whatever. Instagram is really good for some reason.
I think Instagram's definitely the biggest platform right now, whether no matter what your industry is for advertising or marketing or just getting your message across. Instagram just gives you that platform that you can post your pictures, your videos, and then it gives you the reels. You can do real fast things, and then you can change up graphics so easily. I think they're just on point with it all, and it's easy to use. I'm sure it'll change soon because everybody's starting to use it. And when that happens, the kids often use TikTok anyway, but once they drift away, but who knows what's going to happen with TikTok? He just grilled that CEO the other day, and so they may just ban that all completely. So who
Government's
knows?
upset. They want to be able to get all that data. They're mad that I find it interesting that TikTok in China sends all these like really educational videos, and then we get like the cinnamon challenge and then all of these stupid things that are like killing us. We're like, this is great, let's do that. But I don't know, it's just funny.
I totally agree.
Have you heard in social media that blue colors get more likes? A friend of mine from Conduit Coffee in Seattle will post a picture of blue, and he'll get like statistically way more views and likes than any other color. Have you heard any weird, quirky stuff about like doing stuff like that? I know videos right now are algorithmically driven, so you're going to be pushed that. But do you see any demand or any weird stuff where people are like, ooh, I like blue?
I'm not sure if I ever noticed like a certain color, but definitely like all the different graphics and stuff that Instagram and them things offer, like the things that you can cover things up and they make whatever it's called, and you can make things colorful and the reels and everything. I definitely see that everywhere now. I was like, yeah, that's catches your eye. And the filters, I couldn't think of the name, but all the different filters that you can put on, I think that's definitely the thing that is
Stitching
the
is
big
huge.
thing.
I don't know if stitching is being pushed by algorithms or people just really want to see somebody else watching a video, which I don't get. They're going to split the screen and then I have to watch somebody watch it, and I just don't get it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really popular and everybody loves it. I'm just not the target demo for that at all. I don't get it. I'd rather watch any other like infotainment something, but I just maybe somebody can explain to me like what is the intrigue of watching somebody play a video game? Like when we were kids, we would never want to just watch a video of somebody playing a video game. And now it's huge. Like everyone wants to watch people play video. I don't get it. Explain it to me. I don't understand it. Like
I say
so
this. I say all the time to my stepdaughter, she's 13, so they're all into the video game world. And I'm like, listen, we grew up, we had Nintendo and Sega, and yeah, we had tournaments like at our buddy's house, and like a dozen of us would go and all play like Tecmo Bowl or whatever it would be. But two people would sit there and play on the couch, and there was no way 10 of us would be sitting on the couch watching any of it. We would all be out front playing basketball, football, or doing something crazy, and maybe one person would sit there and watch the actual video game, but not like the same person the whole time. Like maybe somebody who just wanted to hang out for a minute. But I couldn't imagine sitting there watching somebody play a video game. I'm like, what a waste of time. Like, why don't you just play it yourself? Like, what's the point of watching somebody?
I don't know. But isn't that how Mr. Beast got super big on his platform, like YouTube? It was a the little block game, right? And he was playing it and everyone, like millions of people came in. And then since then he's got like Mr. Beast burger. Even my wife got suckered into buying Mr. Beast chocolate. I'm like, yo, is this like fair free chocolate or organic? Like it was super light, felt like a little wafer or whatever. It didn't taste like really good. So I'm like, why in the hell did you buy this? And she was like, oh, marketing, packaging. I just got suckered into it. I don't know. It was like one of the like the very end, by the register. I'm like, how in the hell does Mr. Beast have chocolate? What is behind that? But like he's just off doing his own thing.
Oh, dude,
That
he's
dude's
bigger. He's bigger than like every TV network combined. The guy is huge. I mean,
I think he got
everything he
offered $1
does.
billion and he's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
All basically from starting to film himself playing video games, I think. It's taken a
Dan would
while.
know. Dan would definitely know. Dan French, our producer. Dan, what did Mr. B start doing first?
A dessert. Mm.
Hmm.
That's what the cannabis industry needs to do. Just give out like 100 free joints and make some content out of it. Dan, by the way, is our invisible elf. You don't ever see Dan because everybody knows podcast elves are invisible, but he does help make the show run. So shout out to Dan, by the way.
Yeah, Dan's the greatest. And when we need knowledge like that, Dan's on point. He knows the internet like the back of his hand. It's crazy how much knowledge he has. So thank you, Dan.
Discord, man. Let's jump into that because I think there's a lot of people on Discord that don't really maybe understand that platform and how to get on it and use it wisely or efficiently. I've been locked out, so I can't use it. I've done something with my password or whatever. But I hear a ton of people going on there for videos and wanting to do chats and stuff. Do you ever use it?
I personally have only used it a handful of times. A lot of traders, stock traders use it. They set up, I guess, their paid accounts in there. So I guess you get your own kind of server, and then people you can have a link out and people can join your server, and it's that kind of thing. Um, I'm just familiar with it in that aspect, but I'm not really familiar with it that much. I've just checked out a couple people that I talk to. They're like, here, check out my Discord, and they have pretty big followings in there. I mean, they get a lot of
People
people are
use it
doing
like a
so.
Patreon almost. Like, here's my thing, come follow me. It's like a Substack, but videos. So Substack is written, Discord is video, and they both have this aspect of like, you can pay me, like buy me a coffee or whatever, like give me $5 or whatever. So it's kind of this social media engaging platform to kind of draw people in and get them to kind of stay there and communicate, really kind of like this live YouTube video is really kind of meant to create that engagement as well.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure how the payment service works for that. I know Patreon, like you had mentioned, you can start a show up and people pay with a credit card through just the Patreon site. I'm guessing Discord is very similar. Like I said, I know you get your own server, so it's kind of hard to track things. I know a lot of different crazy stuff goes on Discord as well. So I'm very familiar, like the stock industry world. There's a lot of people on it, but I also know a lot of like crazy things go on there. So like people sell on there and do a lot of things because apparently it's very hard to track because you have your own server. So that's why I'm saying I'm not very familiar with it. I understand it, but I don't use it all the time. But it is a very, very big platform. And I do know some of the cannabis people, friends of mine, like I said, they have discords and do all kinds of stuff on it. So it's definitely another big platform for the industry for sure. And it's very discreet. Like I said, you send out a link to your private server and really no one else can get in without being invited and being in, like allowed in. So it's kind of a discreet kind of thing. Very
Let us know if
private.
you guys use Discord. Put it in the comments, and if you guys use Discord, what's your favorite platform? And do you guys use like any apps or anything like that that are maybe off of the traditional, social media that we use? Doug, you use Stock Twits, isn't that right, for stocks? So it's an app, right? So it's not like you just download it and use it.
Yeah, no, you can go on the app store and stock twits. It's like the biggest stock app, and it follows just about every single stock ticker, and you can get the price. And it's a big online community. I mean, it's huge. I post on there all day because I follow stocks and I'm always posting things, but it's a very, very large community. I know people with 100,000 plus followers themselves, and so yeah, that's a pretty fun one. So if you're into the stock industry or trading, stock twits is fun. And yeah, let us know what other cannabis and like stock apps are kind of fun. That's what I always look for. Like I know, like I said, I troll around on Instagram. I know a lot of the people on there that are doing cool things, so I always check it out and see what they're up to and say hello. But
Do you
what
remember the
other
name of that one that failed? I think it was based out of Colorado, Mass Roots. Do you remember that app?
Yup.
Man, that
I
was
just
bad.
remember hearing about it, and then I just remember it failed.
So I think they reorganized, and they were the cannabis app, and they reorganized, and now they're like a lithium buyer or so. I mean, don't quote me on this, but they're doing something like completely different where they were going to get into like mining cryptos, and they're like, oh, never mind, we're going to actually mine lithium or something, just like random. They're like ended up, they're publicly traded, so they kind of just do whatever to. It was bizarre. I don't
Trying
know.
to
Yeah,
raise some kind of capital somewhere.
yeah. I don't know if that guy's gonna do as well. Well, who knows, man? Who knows what half these people do? The guy Tom from MySpace, whatever happened to that guy? You just walk away as a millionaire,
Oh yeah, he sold that for. He was actually really smart. I mean, it probably would have been a bigger platform, but I think he knew that it plateaued and Facebook was taking it over, and he just walked away and he got paid and really nice.
Oh,
But he was smart. I mean, you take the money when you can when it's at the top, and but yeah, what would the evaluation of that thing be today? I always liked it better because you could set up your own homepage, like your own personal website. It was really cool. Like I always said, it actually taught a lot of people HTML code back in the day, whether they knew it or not. There was two sections. They had the code section and the picture section. So you could just upload a picture, but you could flip it right to the code and actually see exactly what the code was written. And I used to write websites we used to create websites, and it was all HTML code back then. So I used to just copy and paste and write the code out. I never even looked at the pictures, but it was pretty cool. I used to tell my friends, like, yeah, dude, you can write HTML code, just look at it. And then I would be like, just copy and paste that code. And then anytime you want to put it in somewhere, like a website or a Craigslist ad or anything, that's the HTML code that goes online. It's really simple. I mean, but now it's a completely different world with building websites. You have like all the easy uploading sites like Wix and stuff like that. So it's it made it way simple. Everything's a WordPress. It's all plug in, and you don't really have to use much common sense to do it.
Is it just me, or is like the consumer facing products like just been really lacking? I feel like since like 2018, there hasn't been anything from either the toker poker. If you guys don't know what that is, you put your lighter in there and it has a little metal thing, and so you can poke, you know, whatever you need to poke. And then, or anything like, yeah, there's like a new advanced dab rigs. They're kind of taking old technology and making it better and better and better. That's good. But I still don't feel like there's like a cool app or a cool consumer like product, or you know, I don't see it on any of these other, like I don't see anybody advertising it on Twitter. I don't see anybody posting, oh, I got this new neat thing. It seems just like this drought of investment into new niche, unique things. And I feel like there's a lot of ingenuity. There's less stoners out there with really cool ideas that can create really cool stuff, but there doesn't seem to be a market for it for some reason. And I think it's a drought that needs to end, and we're going to just like come out with some really cool shit. And I'm excited for it. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but if anybody knows any cool stuff, like let us know. We want to check it out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with just the marketing, like how we were just talking about, like just not being able to properly market it to the masses. I mean, yeah, a lot of it becomes word of mouth, which is the best form of sales for you as a company, but a lot of times you still need to get it out to the masses and have people talking about it. So if you're censored with your advertising, sometimes it's hard to just reach them. I found a cool product just because I'm a big bong smoker real quick. The Barrow Buddy, I think it's called. You drop in a magnet and you just can clean like the outside. Because some pieces I keep mine. I mean, it looks like it came out of the store. I constantly with kosher salt rubbing alcohol every day, like 3 times a day. I'm insane with it. I'm very OCD about it. I like it to be clean. And it's still just, you get this buildup on the glass. I found that product at a convention. I had seen them on Instagram, but I saw them at a convention and I got one, and it actually is great. It works. I use it like every month. And so that was the last cool product I got.
Did you say STD or OCD?
OCD. I definitely don't have any of them, but I definitely have OCD.
I just wanted to clarify that.
It's all good.
Yeah. Good deal. Well, with insurance being the next topic, you guys are going to have to stay with us. We're going to take a quick smoke break, but come back because we want to talk about being able to sue an insurer if you don't get your claims approved. What about getting reimbursed for medical cannabis? You guys want to stick around for all of that coming up after the break.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weejits filtration system. What? The Weejits.com, Weejits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weegit's filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it can make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Welcome back to the Green Rush Live. On our last half hour of this Friday episode, we are going to talk about something really exciting, and that is insurance. Now, I know everyone gets excited about insurance, but this is actually pretty cool. PA, Pennsylvania, actually said they're talking about reimbursing people for their medical cannabis, which I think is awesome, because we always talk about how cannabis is a medicinal purpose, used for medicinal purposes, and it costs a lot. I mean, especially in New Jersey, where it costs an arm and a leg. And I know I'll tell you a quick story. My mom was actually one of the very first patients in New Jersey. At the time, it was where Curaleaf is. That's why they became really the first dispensary. They bought out a company called Compassionate Science, Compassionate Care, Science Care, and they were the very first little dispensary in New Jersey. And my mom was one of the first 50 patients. She had colon cancer, unfortunately passed away, but that was back in 2016. I had the caregiver card, so I knew all the laws and everything, and I always followed it. So I paid attention. But yeah, so I know how much back then I had spent just on just getting the licenses. Back then was crazy. I mean, I had to be fingerprinted for the caregiver card. I mean, it was like gun permits are easier, to be honest with you. But but yeah, to be reimbursed, because I understand like people that have terminal illnesses and they're really using cannabis, because my mom would never use cannabis prior to this, and she told every doctor it was the only thing that helped her, and that's what really got me started into the industry. Not into it, but got me really making my own extracts and helping people. And then I made an oil that kind of helps people stop with seizures. And I've done a bunch of other things, and that's how I really got into it. I'd make her food with butter. I was a chef, and I'd see the difference. It was a miracle. I mean, she had a really bad case. It sucked, but it definitely helped her. And she would have a bag of medicine literally this big, and she would walk around and be like, you know what, I'm just going to stop taking this because this stuff's actually the only thing that helps me. I'm just taking all these medicines, and you can tell the side effects are just one after another. So I've seen a lot with it. And but yeah, so it would have been nice to be able to get that medical cost back, because I know it cost an arm and a leg back then. And I know what it costs for people now, and it definitely helps people. I mean, there's no doubt about it that it helps people going through chemo and other terminal illnesses, and just a whole lot of things. And so yeah, it would be nice if we could get reimbursed, because it's better than anything pharmaceutical that they can give you, to be honest with you. So how do you feel about that, Josh?
I think it's great. I had surgery just over a year ago on my shoulder that I initially screwed up like in high school, and like 25 years later, I'm like, oh, that's what's wrong with it. And so going through that process, the doctors are like, this is where your rotator cuff is screwed up, but your bicep tendon needs to be chopped off, and this is normal, and that's not. And so I'm like, wait, why is the rotator cuff flare normal? And it's like, no matter what you do throughout your life, you're gonna just have a screwed up rotator cuff by the time you're 40. And I was like, oh, that's great, doc, thanks. But it kind of made me think like we all kind of need grease in the wheels to keep us going, right? So it was great when I was, not self-employed, and I could go to a chiropractor and 18 times a year, and I could go get deep tissue massage 18 times a year, and another 18 times for acupuncture. And so now when I want to go, it's like I got to pay a massive deductible or something. I don't even know how much it is, $20 to $100 every time I go in. If cannabis could be subsidized for me to help grease my wheels and help keep that endocannabinoid system flowing, that would be great, because it would probably make me healthier in a lot of other ways that would reduce the expense to these same insurance companies for diabetes, obesity, and all these other issues that American foods are causing. So depending on the game that they want to play, this would seem to make people healthier. But it almost, I mean, I'm not really optimistic in that terms. I think the FDA and everyone else puts stuff out to kill us. Death and taxes is all they care about. But to stay optimistic, I will say that, this is great to allow people to have cannabis to help themselves. And Jesus, man, like with how expensive everything is, like give us a break already. Like pay for my weed already.
It would be incredible. And I mean, just like the elderly people, I mean, even if they just did it at a certain age, you feel bad. I mean, I feel bad for the elderly people, especially, they're not working, they're all on fixed incomes just about. And and most of them, it's crazy, but they started just like cutting people, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of these elderly people were on pharmaceuticals and Oxycontins and painkillers out the wazoo. And then they just started cutting them off. And they're like, here, you can have a medical marijuana card. And they were like, what? And they're like, isn't that bad? And they're like, so then they actually go through the process, get the card, go to the dispensary, have their first initial appointment, and they explain it, but they don't even tell you anything. They tell you like, this is a sativa and an indica and a hybrid, and that's basically on your merry way. And then these people get up to the counter, they don't know what they're talking about. They buy something, they got to go home and then try to consume it. And it's like, what? Like nobody had a clue what's going on. But yet it was fine to just hand them pharmaceutical pills and Oxycontins, and knowing that they was killing these people. And then now you're going to charge them an arm and a leg to go get cannabis because you cut them off. And like these people are literally withdrawing. So they're like, all right, I guess I'm going to go get weed. I mean, what else am I going to do? And yeah, that was happening all over the state. I know that. It was crazy.
That LNI, Labor and Industries, is a great example too, because this is about work-related injuries eligible for reimbursement, and instead of penalizing people for using cannabis, they're actually incentivizing it. And a friend of mine here in Washington, we're the same age, and he was doing roofing, and hurt his back, and they put him on all of these pain medicines. He's gained, I mean, he looks like he's gained 100 pounds, and he's not healthy. He's not doing well. And it's amazing. Like, ever since that injury, his life has gone downhill, like really, really bad. He became homeless, all this stuff, had to live out of his car. If they would have just allowed him to medicate the way he wanted to without fear of punishment and losing his job by popping, negative for cannabis, or positive for cannabis, I mean, um, yeah, all that is stupid. So this Pennsylvania court ruling that cannabis costs can be reimbursed comes with this other caveat that work-related injuries are eligible, which is phenomenal to allow for the court system to side with individuals. Because my sister-in-law works for a company to try to get them back to work, and it is not easy, man. Once people get injured, they don't want to go back to work. I mean, they're just they want to live the socialist lifestyle and have people paid out. And if that were feasible, great, but it's not. So maybe the alternative is cannabis.
Yeah, no, I have a very close friend that recently he's in the union, and he broke his back. He fell off a piece of like scaffolding, and there was a pipe actually sticking out of the ground and went right through his back. He's lucky to be alive. And they just jerked him around for 3 months. They wanted him to get a second opinion. They wanted him to get surgery. And then the day before he was going to schedule it, the insurance company called and said, "No, you got to go get a second appointment opinion. Like, get over an hour away." So he goes and does that. And then the surgeon's on vacation. So he has to wait like an extra 3 months. So now everything's okayed. And it's the same situation. Like, he can't use cannabis because he's in the union. He'll fail a drug test. They'll fire him immediately. But yeah, he's getting all these pain pills, and he's just like, oh my goodness. I just saw him the other day. I stopped by to see him. I feel so bad for the guy. I mean, he's such a hard worker, and that's the thing. He's just like, they like, he goes to the doctors and they treat him like he's a criminal, and I'm like, but he gets it. He's like, because about 8 to 9 out of 10 people, they get hurt and they're just never going back to work. It becomes a system, and he actually wants to go back to work, and I'm like, you may never really actually work. He has to get his like hip and his spine fused together, or like something major. I'm like, yeah, it was pretty bad. Like I said, he's lucky to be even alive, but yeah, like just something like that. So now he's, pharmaceutical medicines, and he can't use cannabis, and it's just a mess. Like, I always want to just give him something and help him out, and it's like he can't take anything. So
Well,
it's
what if your cannabis wasn't good? There was an issue a few years ago when Germany sent back the first shipment of cannabis from Canada because Canada irradiates their food, like whether it's meat, vegetables. It's basically goes through a quote unquote microwave radiation, and it kills bacteria. But in Europe, they're like, nah, you could take your radiated cannabis, get out of here. We don't do that in Europe. So now I guess Illinois is proposing a bill for cannabis radiation labeling, so that, let me take a step back and just say some vegans don't know that there's bone marrow, blood meal, back guano, all of these issues, not issues, but all of these things that they would normally not consume if they were vegan. They're like, oh, it's just a plant. Yes, but so behind the scenes, there are things that are happening like radiated cannabis. So this in Illinois, for example, they're going to amend the Cannabis Regulations and Tax Act, requiring that cannabis infused products at least are treated with a label that they have radiation, that they were remediated with irradiation. So that bill would be really nice. I think we all need to know what's not only in our products, but what the hell are they doing with it after the fact?
No, I agree 100%, because the ground, well, cannabis, when it grows, it just absorbs everything out of the ground. So any kind of heavy metals or toxins or anything, that's going to be in it. So that's for one. So then if you're passing it through radiation the second time after you have all these other toxins in it, I'm sure that's not mixing too well. And then most people consume it by, lighting it. So combustion is probably not the best thing for all, like, that whole combination. So yeah, it would be nice to know exactly what's on the packaging. And that's why the the industry needs to be federally legal because they just need to have not guidelines, but just have a set standard, and just so people just have a clue what's going on. I mean, it's just not fair to just like we were talking about the percentages in THC. They're fixed just because the highest number generally sells the most product. And we had labs literally telling us that they have customers trying to pay them more money to fudge the numbers. So we know it happens. And yeah, it's so how can you trust anything? And then at the same time, it's a competitive industry, and then there's not standards all across the board. And we should know what's in this product because again, it's a medicinal purpose. We use for medicinal purposes, and like I said, a lot of people are combusting it. They use it, which makes it a whole different product. I mean, let's face it, when you take a lighter to something, it becomes something different.
And like you
So
said too, the uptake, because hemp, especially even more than cannabis, will really kind of take out a lot of the heavy metals and any pollutants in the soil. They use it in Chernobyl and everywhere else. So hemp, even especially, needs to really kind of make sure that what's in that and what's being sold in the flower, like if it's grown for biomass, it definitely shouldn't be sold for flour or anything else. But they already allow for crop loss insurance on hemp products, which I think is really interesting. Now that Arkansas growers are suing an insurance after a claim is denied, I guess they wanted crop loss insurance too.
yeah, I guess so. Apparently they had a problem with the chillers weren't set properly, and it was a third party that did it. So I guess their claim got denied, and now they're going after the insurance company. And they figure they have a claim somewheres because it wasn't it wasn't on their end. They didn't make the mistake, so they want to be able to point the finger and go after somebody. And now everybody wants to go, no, we don't want to take responsibility, but they want somebody to take responsibility.
Bro, I
And
got to tell you a story about State Farm. I'm driving 70 miles an hour northbound on I-5, and I got State Farm for insurance, and the wheel falls off my car. Well, first off, I see a wheel fly by me, and I'm like, "Whoa, whose wheel is that?" And then I look in my rear view, and the whole I-5 freeway is like they're way behind me, like 30, 40 yards. And then I'm like, "Oh shit, that's my wheel." And then I start fishtailing, and then I ended up like getting over to the side and then hit the side of the guardrail, whatever. The insurance company came at me and they're like, "Bro, we're not covering that. That's your fault that your wheel fell off." I'm like, "Really? Did I come out and pull that wheel off? How is that my fault?" These insurance companies, I had to sue Expedia. You're welcome, HempFest, because HempFest got screwed over by Expedia. And I won because I got an Airbnb and the fires happened in Eastern Washington. And I was like, I can't go there. The freeway shut down. The whole place is on fire. And they're like, yeah, but you knew that could have happened when you got the insurance. I'm like, that's why people get insurance.
yeah, that's what insurance is
I
for,
sent him to
right?
small claims court and I won. So take that. But I hate
Wow.
insurance companies with the passion. I know it's a necessary evil, but if you can get crop loss insurance and it's legit, great. I just think that this $300,000 claim uh, for in Arkansas for that chiller is going to be interesting with case law down the road and how this kind of evolves when there is legal insurance. It'll just be more of a headache, and you'll have to deal with somebody like Norm Ives, who's a professional cannabis insurance guy, because you don't want to deal with some schmuck out there.
Yeah, no, if they definitely win this case, there's going to be a lot more lawsuits flying around because they're just going to take the playbook and run with it, which is generally what happens.
There's a ton, man. There's a IIPR, you know them. They're publicly traded company, and they do a lot of lease backs. So a lot of these companies, since money can't be lent by banks, they will go to a company like IIPR and give a loan. So they'll buy a place and then immediately go and get a loan from IIPR so they can continue to operate. And yet we're seeing already some of these lawsuits kind of coming out. You can't file bankruptcy yet. That'll be kind of a normalized situation when we do see those BKs in the US. We're already seeing bankruptcies in Canada.
Canada, yeah.
But at least with some of these lawsuits, it's quote unquote normalizing the industry as we see accountability, people kind of pushing back. And you've got some investors that totally got screwed in the very beginning with these new IPOs coming out and just having to write off billions. Like, I'm not going to name names, man, but there's a couple companies out there that had to write billions of dollars in investment, malinvestment. And so, yeah, you got the second lawsuit filed against Cannabis Real Estate Investment Trust called Innovative Properties because shareholders are accusing them of misleading investors about due diligence on some California-based companies. So, I mean, due diligence is number one, but I've seen it over and over in this industry. It's just not really a thing people do. And then when things go wrong, man, I've been saying it for years on my podcast on the Talking Hedge that lawsuits are going to be the new green rush.
Yeah, they're going to be the big money maker, and they're going to put companies way out because there's going to be lawsuits no matter what. And once one attorney finds that loophole, you know they're all coming out of the woodwork every which way, and they're all going after everybody. So
Yep.
it's yeah, that's why this case is kind of interesting because it's going to open the floodgates if it goes through. And
Here's my positive spin, though, and maybe we can end a little bit early on this, which is that as we see these lawsuits progress, you're going to see the MedMens of the world coming to an end, the Cureleafs realizing they can't compete. But as I've mentioned on the show before, the path that they've already laid is going to allow for these mom and pops to ride on the coattails and rise from the ashes as the new wave comes through. We've mentioned in the last segment that we need to get connoisseurs, growers, people that know what they're doing to come out of the woodwork. And I think the infrastructure is built on the back of malinvestment. And so maybe with that, we can do this co-op model or farmers market model or some model that works. And in the end, I think that it's a positive, but we got to go through these hard times in order to get there. All of this normalization and everything, and seeing this crap that nobody wants from MSOs is going to provide these underground growers to kind of have an opportunity to come out and provide us with something that people actually want. So it's going to come with some patience, whatever, but I do think that there's optimism as that phoenix rises from the ashes eventually.
No, you needed the big money MSOs to kind of pave the way anyway, because it took a lot of money to break through lobbyists, this, that, and everything else. So I mean, absolutely needed to be in place, but like I said earlier, I think they just scaled out too big too fast and didn't realize the logistics of the industry and really the laws and everything, the regulations that were going to hold them back. It wasn't really well thought out business wise. It was just like, well, how fast can we grow and how big? Who can be the biggest is going to win, and it's not always that way. And
No doubt.
unfortunately, I think companies are going to find out, and there's always ups and downs. I mean, the whole economy is about to hit a rut. So, I mean, of course, the cannabis industry is going to get smoked because it's one of them industries that's, it doesn't have real regulations and real banking and this and that, like we talk about. So, but as you said, there's going to be plenty of opportunity because the dust will settle and everybody will rise. So that will be the time I think that you see incredible products coming out. I think is that next wave. I agree 100%.
So as we see this consolidation, cannabis in general will probably be recession proof, although people are going to shift to like bottom shelf, not top shelf. So just like any other sin stock or whatever else, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis during times of economic trials will become even more popular as people try to just smoke their way into happiness. But it doesn't mean that those cannabis companies that are publicly traded are going to be immune to the absolute collapse of any equity company. Bank of America in 2008 became a 99-cent company from like $30 or $50 or whatever it was. Nobody is going to be immune to Deutsche Bank that has trillions of dollars in derivatives collapses. Nobody's going to be immune to that, but we can all smoke and party when the connoisseurs come out of the ashes eventually. That's the end story for me is that we will get finally that connoisseur cannabis quality that we've all been like craving but it's not going to be for another couple of years when it's ubiquitous, when it's like everywhere, instead of just this trash, this tourist weed that we see at all of the stores.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is tourist weed. I mean, it really is. And it used to be amazing to go out west to Colorado and dispensary hop. And I say the last few times I've gone, I haven't been impressed with much out there. And yeah, you're in Seattle, I'm in New Jersey, and it's everywhere's in between. So it's the whole industry all the way across the board. It is. It's just, it's consolidating and then it'll blow up again. It's just the way the markets work. Everything revolves that way. And that's economics at its finest. And we're about to watch it happen. And it's a new industry, but there will be plenty of opportunity to get in and make a fortune. So just learn from others' mistakes. That's how you do it. You learn from what mistakes others made and you avoid them mistakes at all costs, because they will happen again if you if you try to run a business the same way. And so yeah,
Do you guys see do you have a lot of drive-throughs for coffee shops? Like home of Starbucks here, we have a ton of mom and pop like drive-throughs. Like the little shack is just big enough for one barista or whatever. You guys have those?
Nah, ours is more or less a Dunkin' Donuts and or a Starbucks, but there's a couple like little ones, but they're not on every corner. They would probably do much better, but
the whole West Coast has these, and I think the evolution of the Dunkin' Donuts, the Starbucks, I try to use that analogy of like the mom and pop baristas. You have this teeny little stand. You'll have your local place that I mentioned that people want to go to and get their local cannabis from a local grower, like people go for their brewers. So I just think it's going to evolve in a better industry, or create a real industry, than whatever it is that we call this now. I'm not a fan of what we're living through right now, and I'm eager to see the next evolution, which unfortunately requires a horror story before that love story can rise.
Yeah, this is like that stepping stone before it can really take off to the next level, and it just happens to be one of them times where everything's just kind of pulling back. So of course this is going to pull back really good, but it's going to, like we say, we're still going to be here in a few years when everything starts taking off again. So it's going to be good.
But it's that whole thing with insurance. Like we like insurance, but we hate insurance. You know what I'm saying? It's like the necessary evil of it is kind of the analogy in a nutshell, where it's normalizing. It's terrible to have to deal with, but at the same time, who doesn't like discounted cannabis or government subsidized weed? I'm not gonna say no to that.
Now it'd be pretty fun if they would pay for it, but I won't expect anything. I won't look for it, and if it happens, I'll be really, really excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is about 6 o'clock Eastern, which means we're wrapping this up. So until the next time, we are here every Friday, 4 to 6 live for the Green Rush Cannabis Business Podcast. So make sure to hit us up next week or anytime. Visit our YouTube, social media. We're 24/7 online, procannabismedia.com. Hit us up. But for Doug Miller and myself, Josh Kincaid, I think we're out of here. Dan, our invisible elf, says goodbye. Have a great weekend. And till the next week. See you guys.
Coming up on We Talk News this week, Delaware is now on the verge of becoming the 22nd state to legalize adult use of cannabis. But will that governor use their veto power again? New York State is starting to move on the illegal pop-up shops in that city and state. Plus, Hudson Valley is given the green light for dispensaries. A heinous murder in North Carolina at a hemp store will deliver the death penalty to the perpetrator. Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream wants to help the black entrepreneur in the cannabis business. And Washington State is poised to become the third state to ban cannabis testing for all employees. Plus, it's Hash Bash weekend in Michigan. All that and more on We Talk News with Elena Pinto. Next.
So for years, we've been doing manufacturing, financial services, medical, and so forth on businesses that stand alone, from doctors' offices to day traders to even small banks. And so when cannabis came along, all of the tools, skills, and miscellaneous that we learned in there, we were able to apply it for them. And for us, it wasn't that big of a problem or a challenge. It worked great. And so they just needed a reporting feature in one software. And luckily that the software company came through for us, came it back, and now it's become the backbone for our offerings. And it's worked out incredibly well.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Pinto, and this is Weed Talk News. The race to become the 22nd adult use of cannabis legal state might belong to Delaware soon. Both the House and the Delaware Senate have passed bills that would legalize possession of up to an ounce of cannabis and establish a market for the industry. There is a catch here when you consider that their Democratic governor, John Carney, already vetoed a similar bill last year. Carney was non-committal when directly asked if he was going to veto the already approved legislation. The legislature can overturn the governor's veto with another positive vote by both houses. So, is Delaware going to be number 22? Stay tuned. Michigan, though, will be celebrating their cannabis industry this weekend with the 52nd Hash Bash, and Rick Thompson will be right in the middle of the celebration.
Hello again, everyone. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, Hash Bash is this weekend, hence my awesome t-shirt. The incredible event starts at noon on Saturday and runs until you decide to walk away. The combination protest and celebration will feature speakers like U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, the Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savitt, County Commissioner and former House Rep Yusuf Rabi, plus legends of the cannabis revolution like John Sinclair, Adam Brooke, Melody Carr, and myself. Another legend in cannabis law reform, Jamie Lowell, will be hosting the event, and I am the co-host. Now, if you're attending, wear weather-appropriate clothing and plan your parking out ahead of time. The Bash is a cultural event unlike any other in America. This is our 52nd anniversary of the celebration. But wait, there's more. The first Saturday in April has grown to be far more than just a single event weekend. You can join our parallel event, the Monroe Street Fair, from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m., and the fair is just 2 blocks south of the Hash Bash itself. Then there's the Hash Bash Treasure Hunt, a game where you purchase a treasure map and let it lead you to a dozen fun places in Ann Arbor where map holders are given free gifts of cannabis and merchandise. Not to be outdone, the Hash Bash Cup offers 3 days of partying starting on Friday, running through Sunday. It's a whole hotel takeover where cannabis consumption goes down in every corner of the space. A few days later, join the Michael Thompson Clemency Project for a frank discussion about freeing incarcerated people from Michigan prisons, featuring actor and Senate candidate Hill Harper, moderating a panel of experts. Now that's on the 17th. And on the 20th, there's the 6-pound cannabis giveaway at Lighten Up Provisioning Center in Flint. So come on out on April 1st and join us as we protest injustice and celebrate our culture. Now, the other huge story this week involves the continuing federal investigation of corruption and influence peddling among Michigan's lawmakers and lobbyists during the formative years of the state's cannabis industry. This investigation has implicated former speakers of the House and former Senate majority leaders in cover-ups and payments made to associates in exchange for favored treatment in the awarding of cannabis business licenses. Now, the latest bombshell was dropped just this week. We've learned that former head of the now defunct Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association lobbying firm named Steve Linder is the center of an investigation into arranging jobs for lawmakers' family members, payments made to family or associates by those seeking adult use cannabis licenses, and more. The probe seems to focus on Linder's access to Republican lawmakers, and now his shady contributions bought him the right to tinker with the language of bills being debated in Michigan's legislature. During a terribly ill-advised speech Linder gave to the Kansas legislature last year, he claimed that he dictated policy, shaped legislation with his Republican cronies, and was, quote, the last person to have his fingerprints on the medical marijuana business program, which was created in 2016. Now, that bill was passed over the objections of myself and others. Linder's lackadaisical methodology of influence peddling was honed over more than a decade of prior lobbying experience, specifically while under the Republican administration of Governor Rick Snyder. Oversight of the lobbying industry was lax during Snyder's 8 years, and the horrible, dysfunctional Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act was the result. The lessons here are twofold. First, if you're working with a weasel, expect that you'll be asked to account for all that immoral, weaselly action. And second, if you think nobody's watching what you do, you're wrong. These probes are far from over, and the hits just keep coming. Michigan has seen several bad actors being forced to pay the price of hating on sick people or cheating the system. New York State, this is your future in 3 years. Fly right, keep that money in your pocket. You're going to need it. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News.
Lots going on in the state of New York and the Big Apple itself. One item in particular is certainly head-scratching. There's an illegal dispensary in the state that's being sued by Toys R Us. The store in question is calling itself Zaza R Us, and you can see why the toy store would be upset. Pam Schmiel has that story and more from the always changing cannabis scene in New York State.
It's Pam Schmiel, host of the Mary Jane Society podcast with the New York City Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Big news coming out of New York this week. The legal injunction stopping dispensaries from opening in Western New York has been lifted, except for a small area in the Finger Lakes region. This means that the Office of Cannabis Management can now move forward to approve social equity licenses in that area. And in Brooklyn, Toys R Us is suing an illegal dispensary for a look-alike logo. Are they trying to lure children into their storefront? Do they think that Toys R Us would be amused with trade infringement? And local community boards are looking to their residents to fight the illegal pot shops disrupting their neighborhoods. They are asking the residents to submit the name and location of these storefronts in their neighborhood and plan to make a formal complaint to the city on behalf of these communities. And can New Yorkers get New Yorkers get Medicare or public health providers to pay for their medical marijuana? Well, the bill to make this a reality is now making its way through various committees and assemblies in the New York State Legislature. And in Queens, another dispensary is about to open, but only temporarily, because New York lawmakers are publicly embarrassed by how they have fumbled New York's cannabis rollout, that they are opening pop-up dispensaries to make the public think they are making progress. And the Office of Cannabis Management claims they are doing it to infuse money into the business and then will close for construction for a number of months before they reopen. Business 101 tells me this is not the way to launch a business. That's this week's news, New York City Cannabis Report. I'm Pam Schmiel with the Mary Jane Society podcast, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Thomas Howard from Cannabis Legalization News takes a look at cannabis reform by the Illinois legislature this year with the Illinois Report.
Hey, everybody. My name's Tom. You can find me at cannabisindustrylawyer.com, by the way, and I'm here to give you an update on what bills have a shot in 2023 out of the state of Illinois. Cannabis amendments happen all the time when a state legalizes it, and we have 2 pages of amendments to go through. going to start with HB 3939. It ain't going nowhere, but it was the Bring Your Own Cannabis bill. And this would allow municipalities to license certain activities. The reason why it didn't make it out may have something to do with an HB we'll talk about later. Then there's HB 3921. That one is still alive. This one allows 540 days, up from the original 180 days, for a dispensary to find a certain location, because we do a conditional process here in Illinois. You don't need a location for your dispensary. In fact, you don't need a location for your dispensary for a year and a half. Wow. And also creates some changes to HVAC requirements for cultivators. And then there's HB 3917, a compassionate use bill that would have gotten rid of certain disqualification for non-violent offenders, but that's going nowhere. And then there's HB 3915, also going nowhere. This would have stopped the department from issuing any more transporter licenses until 2029. Then there's HB 3846, and this provides for expungement for certain minor cannabis offenses. And that is, if you graduate from a community college in Illinois, you can get your minor cannabis offenses automatically expunged. That one moved on to committee. It's got a shot. So does HB 3741, the Cannabis Radiation Labeling Act. So if your cannabis was radiated or irradiated, treated with radiation to kill bugs and pathogens before it was sold to you for smoking, you have to label it. Then there is HB 3499, the rent-seeking quota bill, which is not what it's actually called, but it does amend the act to provide that all dispensaries, cultivation centers, it doesn't say craft growers though, must have at least 40% of their ancillary service contracts, including janitorial, accounting, printing, and other services, to be with a business with at least a one certification for being either a minority, female-owned business, or persons with disabilities business. That one made it, even though it probably does violate equal protection, as it is a quota-based system. And there's an affirmative action case from the Supreme Court coming this year. Moving on, HB 3387 redefines what a batch means for testing, not going anywhere. And then there's HB 2632, the Juvenile Expungement Act. So if a person was convicted for cannabis offenses before their 21st birthday, when they become an adult, they would have those automatically expunged. That one has made it, and so has HB 2522. And that contains a provision regarding cannabis delivery operator licenses, requires the department to create a scoring system to issue delivery operator licenses, similar to what they have in Massachusetts. This skips right over the dispensary. These delivery licenses can deliver directly to the end consumer and buy their cannabis from any licensed cannabis operator. So they could buy it from the grower and take it directly to the consumer. They could buy it from the retailer location, take it directly to consumer. Then there is HB 2383, and that amends the Cannabis Act to provide that they will issue more dispensing organizations after January 1st of 2022 to people that are or organizations that are 51% owned and controlled by at least one qualified entity with a disability. So they're taking social equity into strange new places. Of disabled means social equity now. HB 2281, that removes language prohibiting dispensing organizations from operating drive-throughs. That one also made it. So also that would include a delivery. So that's kind of mooting the delivery operator. If the dispensary also has the right to go ahead and deliver to the end consumer and have a drive-through, maybe that will combat it. Then there's HB 1989. Outdoor grow. We do not have outdoor grow in Illinois. That would change it. It would redefine enclosed lock facility to mean a greenhouse, building, outdoor canopy space, or other enclosed area. That one made it out, and it was reassigned to a different committee on March 10th. All these ones that made it out got reassigned on March 10th. I did a brief thing about it on the last Weed Talk News I was on. Now we go to HB 1436. And that will amend the Cannabis Act to create the Cannabis Equity and Oversight Commission and also create a centralized regulator. So similar to most other states, there's one regulator. In New Jersey, one, New York, Massachusetts, California. In Illinois, they're split between two. The Department of Agriculture for the growers and the processors, and the Department of Professional Regulation for the dispensaries. This would unify that. Made it out. Now, HB 1499 might explain why that other HB 3909, the Bring Your Own Cannabis bill, that would allow municipalities to create events and other types of licensing, didn't make it out, because 1499 does essentially the same things. It creates local cannabising licensing. It provides that a county or municipality can issue licenses for temporary events, cannabis clubs, cannabis tours that may allow for the sale and consumption of cannabis. That's made it out of committee. Maybe Illinois will become a tourist destination for cannabis. Unlike Vegas, which, why would you go to Illinois when you go to Vegas? And then there's HB 31, and that amends the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act to remove language that says any person or entity awarded a craft grower license can only hold one craft grower license. The current, with where the years are, the current limit is 3. This would raise it to 10. And it does not raise the license limit, but it does say that there would be another round of 30 this year and another round of 30 in 2024. Maybe then they'll raise the license limit, because that would put us over the 150 if they issued 30 this year and 30 next year. And it also requires for THC oil to be made available to our infusers. That's right, they created a whole license type that does not enable the person who has it to actually create their own raw material. They have to go buy oil from somebody else and then make gummies. Then there is HB 1205, and that would amend the Cannabis Control Act to calculate for the amount of weight for the cannabis so that it would be equal to what is in the actual bill that they have. And that's made it out of committee as well. I think this also gets to the resealable aspect of it. Then there is HB 25, that's also made it. That is the one that actually raises the craft grower limit to 10, but it suspends their tax for 2 years. So now you can own up to 10 craft grows. They're going to issue another 60 craft grows. They haven't changed the 150 license limit, but you don't have to pay taxes. And then there's HB 32, also made it out, also regarding the craft growers. It provides that a premises may co-locate up to 3 craft grows and a dispensary or an infuser. And that would be effective immediately if it passes and it has a shot. Those are the bills that got out. It looks like there's more licenses and more opportunities for craft grows in the state. It's a limited market state. The price of cannabis is still pretty high. Maybe you want to do some business in Illinois. And if you do, go visit me at cannabisindustrylawyer.com. And now back to you, Elena, with more Weed Talk News.
Very disturbing story has emerged from North Carolina, a state with very strict cannabis and hemp laws, even though Delta 8 is legal in North Carolina next door. According to High Times, 42-year-old Margaret Bracey was alone working for an exotic hemp company when a 22-year-old named Charles Haywood robbed that store and got away with $750. But before he fled, he stabbed Bracey multiple times and she died. This week, a judge ruled that this assault justifies capital punishment and the death penalty. Well, ultimately, it was his own mother who turned him in when she saw surveillance video captured at the store. Turning now to Washington State, one of the first states to legalize cannabis in the U.S. in 2012, allowed businesses to conduct pre-employment drug screening. But now a bill has been passed by their House to join California and Nevada as the only other 2 states to ban those tests. Matthew Friedlander has more from that state.
Hello, everyone. Matthew Friedlander here, coming to you from the owner's office at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So we are in the 12th week of the legislative session here in Washington, and things are moving right along. Most notably, a bill has passed the House and the Senate and is on the way to the governor's office for signing, and this bill will remove cannabis from pre-employment drug screenings. Great news for anybody in Washington looking for a job and using cannabis in a state where cannabis is legal to use. We also have a bill still moving through the process that will allow the LCB to regulate synthetic cannabinoids inside the I-502 system. There are some strong feelings about this bill and not good ones, so we are keeping an eye on this. There are several other bills still moving through the process, most notably the excise tax removal for patients is still in the works, so we are hopeful that that'll see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I got for you this week. Matthew Friedlander reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
As we continue to follow the end of cannabis prohibition around the world, in Missouri, that market is flourishing. And that's where you'll find Brandon Jones. And this week, we introduce a new sponsor to the Missouri Report, Baker Brands. Here's Brandon's Missouri Cannabis Report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And this week, sponsored for the first time by Baker Brands. What's up, guys? Appreciate you. Check out their stuff. They got over 1,000 SKUs. So I'm out here at CannaCon in Oklahoma City. Quite a turnout already. Lots of vendors. People are actually waiting outside to get in. It's like a big crew getting ready to just come in the doors, getting ready to come in and see the whole show. Just a little bit about Missouri news on the way down here. Driving from Kansas City, I had to add an hour and a half to my trip to make sure I wasn't driving through Kansas. No way I want to get pulled over with anything in the vehicle in any way in the state of Kansas. It's a 30-day minimum sentence even for paraphernalia. So I had to drive through Missouri, add an hour and 45 minutes to get into Oklahoma to make it to the show. I did get to drop by quite a few dispensaries on the way. And my favorite thing that I saw at any of the dispensaries was a 3-generation, a daughter, mother, and grandmother in a dispensary, checking out the products, going over, asking questions about terpenes. This is what I want. Listen to the bud tender, actually listen and educate. And seeing all 3 there was just an awesome thing to see here in the state of Missouri. So very, very happy to see the stigmas getting changed. Appreciate all the support from the community. Again, if you can get down to Oklahoma City, check out CannaCon. That would be awesome. Big turnout, lots of fun shows. And again, I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution, the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Stay educated and medicated, everybody. Have a great week.
Brandon Jones, Missouri Cannabis Report is brought to you by Baker Brands, a curated B2B marketplace for head shops and dispensaries.
One of the most symbolic changes in cannabis policy in the U.S. was the rescinding of the Cole memo by then Attorney General Jeff Sessions in 2018. Now the current AG, Merrick Garland, is looking into reinstating that memo, which basically said that the federal government would not interfere with any cannabis business in a legal state. For the rest of the news out of Maryland and DC, here's Andrew Beringer.
Hello, my name is Andrew Beringer, and this is the DC Area Report for Weed Talk News. In federal news, a bill was reintroduced to Congress, the Veterans Equal Access Act. Now, if this bill is approved and enacted, it would allow veterans to get medical cannabis recommendations from their VA doctors, as long as they live in a legal cannabis state, of course. Currently, VA doctors are only allowed to discuss medical cannabis with their patients, nothing more. This bill has been submitted many times to Congress with bipartisan support. Unfortunately, it has failed every time. If this bill passed this time around, it would symbolize a huge step forward in legalizing cannabis in the United States, as well as access to medicine for our veterans. Thank you for your service. This week in Washington, D.C., top local officials participated in a congressional hearing demanding that the city fully legalize cannabis and create framework to regulate cannabis sales. Now, back in 2014, Washington, D.C. residents voted to legalize cannabis. However, for some reason, Congress has stopped any laws from being passed that would establish a regulated cannabis industry in the district. Let's hope D.C. gets what is needed for their industry. Finally, in Maryland news, the state Senate advances their cannabis bill, SB 516, with amendments added. At the beginning of this legislative session, the House and Senate had congruent bills for legalizing adult use cannabis in Maryland. However, during the legislative process, both House and Senate added amendments to their respective bills. It is now up to the House and Senate to iron out these amendments to create one bill before it can be sent off to the governor's desk for his John Hancock. Well, that will do it for me, Andrew Beringer, and the DC Area Report for Weed Talk News. See you next week.
If you know anything about the state of Vermont, you might know that Ben & Jerry's ice cream is based there. What you may not have known is that one of their founders, Ben Cohen, is a great philanthropist and advocate for responsible use of cannabis. Now he is starting a fund that will offer access to capital for Black entrepreneurs from the sales of the B3 brand of pre-rolls, live resin vapes, and flower. 80% of the profits from those sales will help advocacy movements and provide low interest loans to those most impacted by the failed war on drugs. With more from the state of Vermont, here's our green nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. Tall Truck, a small licensed indoor cultivator, was given a $20,000 fine by the Cannabis Control Board for transporting cannabis outside of Vermont. The owner posted a video of himself in New York City on Instagram to promote his cannabis. Someone reported the video, and following an investigation by the Vermont Cannabis Control Board, Tall Truck was cited and fined for delivering cannabis into New York City. This week in the capital of Vermont, the Vermont Cannabis Control Board voted to approve the license applications of 36 cannabis establishments, twice as many approved from last month. 24 cultivators, 8 manufacturers, and 4 retailers. The Cannabis Omnibus Bill H270 made it through crossover and landed in Senate Economics. Stay tuned to vermontgrowers.org for legislative updates. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The Vermont Cannabis Report is supported by another Green Mountain business, Cannatrol, winner of High Times Best Dry Cure System. Check them out at cannatrols.com.
The big story in Massachusetts is the next Live in the Weeds from the Summit Lounge, presented this time by Berkshire Roots on Wednesday, April 12th. And maybe this is self-serving, but the first one was a big success. And now PCM founder Jimmy Young is teaming up with his former NECN Sports colleague Mike Adams for a reunion at Massachusetts' only private cannabis social club. And with more from the Bay State, here's PCM founder Jimmy Young.
Thanks, Elena, and boy, am I glad you're back. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Massachusetts Cannabis Report, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. Let's start in the western part of the Bay State in Amherst. You know, that's where the University of Massachusetts is located. Well, for years now, the UMass Student Cannabis Education Coalition held Extravaganza, a celebration of cannabis in Amherst. Now, it all started back in the 1990s when it was more of an act of civil disobedience for the reform of cannabis laws. Now that the state has been legal for adults to use since 2018, Extravaganza will be a celebration of all things having to do with the culture of cannabis consumption. And this year it returns on April 15th and will be held at the Franklin County Fairgrounds in Greenfield. Now, there's another former politician getting into the ranks of cannabis dispensary owners. It's Josh Zakem. And if that name sounds like the guy they named the bridge after, you're right. The Zakem Bridge is named in memory of the late Lenny Zakem, longtime Northeast director of the ADL. Josh is Lenny's son, and his uncle Stu Zakem has a PR company in New York called Bridge Strategic Communications. He also has the distinction of being the first person I interviewed for In the Weeds back in 2018 at NECAN. Josh got approval for his dispensary in the Back Bay on March 6th. Now they just have to find the right location to begin the next never-ending process of opening a dispensary. Good luck, Josh. That's the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News, sponsored by Holyoke Cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
First quarter results from publicly traded cannabis companies are now being released, and our stock expert, Doug Miller, has this week's cannabis stock report.
Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Leafly. Well, they're changing their business model. No longer going to be reporting on the industry, but they're going to have consumer-oriented content, such as information on products, LeafFly remains on the exchange's list of non-compliant companies. So let's go ahead and look at the stock chart. It was trading around 37 cents today, and it looks like it's going to continue to dip. I'm not so sure that this pivot is exactly what the company needed, but it might have been the only thing the company could have done. So I'm going to keep my eye on it and see where it bottoms out, and then I'll report back and see if it's going to bounce. And that's this week's cannabis stock report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
North of the border in Canada, there continues to be contraction of that cannabis economy. It's been just about 5 years of federal legalization and sales of cannabis in Canada. And like here in the US, some of the first dispensaries to open are now closing. Here's Debbie Facey with the Canadian Cannabis Report.
Hi, this is Debbie Facey from We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent with this week's Canadian Toke. In Canada this week, we don't have too much going on, but one of our biggest news or stories that we have is the laws and the regulations are going to be going under some nice consulting when it comes to creating a better market for us here in Canada. So the markets, or I should say the categories that they are looking at, especially to be able to gain some insight on, are the licensing rules, the security requirements, the production requirements, packaging, and the label regulations. Right now, we do have several, I don't want to say a variety, but we do have several different indications when it comes to the legal cannabis that we do sell here. And with that, it does make some of the provinces not necessarily have the same laws and the same rules when it comes to distributing, creating, labeling, packaging, or distributing. So they're trying to make a little bit more of a streamlined sort of, I guess, almost streamlined setting where it will just make it a lot easier across the board, so across Canada, compared to by provinces. This will then also allow more products to be able to reach the shelves, and also a better turnover when it comes to products being able to be reached among different markets, different demographics, and different provinces. Next, what we have in Canada, unfortunately, is the decline in the tax reform that we had all pled and asked for. Most of Canadians that were within the industry had pled with the government in order to put some sort of taxation on cannabis. As of right now, we have not heard any great news, somewhat of a rejection, but at the same time, we are still working on it. Unfortunately, it is something that we are still facing and enduring, especially when it comes to the different products and the lines that are coming out with the craft or non-craft indication on it, which is making it a little bit more pricier than it should. Unfortunately, again, it is something that we are waiting and hoping to see coming at least in 2014, at least, but that is just something that I am hoping for, as well as every other Canadian, but that is something where the government has to sadly put their two buds in. This is Debbie Facey from We Talk News, your Canadian correspondent with this Canadian Toke. Peace.
And finally tonight, just when you thought Atlantic City in New Jersey was going to be a haven for cannabis consumption lounges, that stigma has reared its misinformed head again. This week, the Newark, New Jersey Central Planning Board denied the application by rapper Raekwon from the Wu-Tang Clan for his Hashatoria. It seems that the clergy from the oldest church in Newark protested. Those protests came from elders, clergy, and parishioners. They cited increased traffic and people walking to their cars stoned. Another example of why normalization and acceptance is more important than legalization. And it's why we say it's a whole new world of weed out there, so use it responsibly. I'm Elena Pinto for Weed Talk News. We'll see you next week.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of In the Weeds, and once in a while, the really live business cannabis talk show we call Green Rush on Friday afternoons from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore, so I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now, if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weedgets filtration system. What? The Weedgets.com, Weedgets, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. Now, the guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. So here's how it works. You start with that glass bowl, you flame on, and then you inhale nice and smooth so the smoke goes through 3 different filtration and cooling systems. Now, if pre-rolls is your thing, you can use the Weedgets filter that a pre-roll fits into perfectly. That's right, or even a chillum. The more filters, the smoother the draw. Best of all is the price. You can get all this, or one or the other, for just a few bucks. It'll cool your smoke and you'll give your lungs a break. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weedgets.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind. All that resin and tar is collected in the polyurethane filters that are easy to clean with soap, water, and a few Q-tips. Your lungs will thank you, and so will I.
As a broker, we have access to many cannabis carriers. So I will go in with 2 or 3 quotes for people. The quotes might be $20,000 for one, $22,000 for another, $17,500 for another. Pretty close among the 3. What I tell people is it's not the pricing, it's what's included and not included, meaning exclusions. An exclusion in layman's terms is just something that's not included. It's not on the menu. So it's just not included. But if you don't know that, if no one shows you that on page 71 of a 150-page policy, you're not going to know. No one knows. I never met one person that says they read an insurance policy. If you do, I got some property in Florida for you.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
So the reality of the matter is, big banks and small banks are going to be different in a lot of ways. And they're both going to have their advantages and disadvantages. For a business like cannabis, you really have to have an integral knowledge of that business and a real granular knowledge of that business and the players involved in it. And that's why if you look at the banks that are successful to play in this space in Massachusetts, they are smaller banks that are very heavy, intensified personal touch, human communication, where you don't get a lot of that with the bigger banks.